Scaling an AI agency does not need to be difficult as long as you're following the right systems and building out everything in the optimal order, because there is a lot of stuff you need to put in place, but people overcomplicate it a ton. So that's the whole purpose of what I'm gonna be doing here with this series. This is going to be a 14-part series where I'm quite literally going to be breaking down every single aspect of our entire agency, starting from picking the offer, picking your niche, all the way through to the sales side, the fulfillment, the onboarding, the scaling, absolutely everything from start to finish. So you will have everything you could possibly need to where if you just follow this whole series and implement everything you see, you will have all the systems and processes inside of your agency that we use inside of ours to scale. And so without further ado, let's get into this first video. It's going to be a simple one, just breaking down why you should even start an AI agency. Because there's a ton of online business models, and like I always say, they all work. All online business models work if you put in the time, the effort, and consistency. But it does come down to opportunity cost. What is your time better spent doing? Where's the most leverage? What business model can you get your desired results with the quickest, right? Because in a perfect world, the least amount of effort, the least amount of time to get the result you want is the best case situation, right? And so I think the AI agency is without a doubt that best business model to not only learn a ton of the skills, because you have to handle all parts of the business, right? Sales, fulfillment, marketing, client success, just absolutely everything. So you build out a ton of skills for you personally that you'll have for your whole life, but it's also a relatively simplistic business model with, like I said, just implementing the right systems, following the right processes to build an agency that can get you to the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K a month mark and beyond. And so let's get into this here, why you should even pick an AI agency. So there's gonna be a few things that we're gonna be breaking down inside of here. 6 main categories and comparing them against 5 common business models. The 5 business models that we're going to be talking about is 1, faceless YouTube channels. Very popular business model right now because a lot of people are too scared to show their face. I don't think it's the best way to go, but we're gonna be comparing. Another big one is OnlyFans management. A little controversial, but still a viable business model. And of course, the main one we're gonna be talking about, the AI SMMA, or the AI social media marketing agency. 4th one is gonna be e-commerce in general, speaking about drop shipping, Amazon FBA, etc. And the 5th one is gonna be growth operating. This is another huge one that's blowing up because people don't wanna run their own agency, they just wanna handle the back end fulfillment. And so we're gonna be comparing these 5 businesses across these 6 categories. 1, startup costs and investment. 2, scalability and growth potential. 3, market demand and trends. 4, skill set and learning curve. 5, the profit margins and revenue streams. 6, the potential speed to hit 10K a month, which is a lot of beginners' first goal, right? So 10K a month is gonna be kind of the main time frame because that's kind of the coveted online business number, right? So that's gonna be what we're gonna be using for that. And now, first things first, let's talk about the startup cost and investment. When it comes to faceless YouTube channel, right? There's low startup costs. There's really not too much you need to worry about. You're kind of just going on YouTube, right? It really only requires basic equipment, microphone, editing software, screen recording tools, Loom, that type of stuff. No need for expensive cameras or on-camera presence, at least until you're pulling cash, or then you can kind of start to scale that up and invest in better quality equipment. When it comes to OnlyFans management, you are gonna have moderate costs. Nothing crazy, but for the average person who's starting out with maybe not a lot of capital, it is gonna be a moderate investment. And so the investment is primarily in digital marketing tools, content creation, and client management platforms, with most operations handled remotely. It is online business, right? So that is a plus, but there is gonna be a little bit of moderate cost when it comes to this business channel or to this business model, whereas faceless YouTube, right? There's really nothing, you're just posting YouTube videos. Now, AI SMMA, extremely low startup cost. You can start this with really under $100 to your name, right? Or about $100. You have Go High Level. That's the main software you're gonna be using for everything. And then you might need to buy, if you're doing cold outreach, which is, if you have very little money, it's free, right? You just cold DMs, cold email, cold calls. But if you're gonna invest in ads and everything, it's minor costs, but nothing too crazy. You're gonna be leveraging proven ad platforms and AI automation for outreach, which means no need for heavy upfront investment. The main expenses are gonna be ad spend as you start to scale, but it's not necessary to start. When I first started my agency, I closed my first 6, 7 clients purely with cold DMs, and that cost me like $40. You also are gonna have basic softwares like Go High Level and stuff. As you start to scale, you'll spend more and more on softwares. We spend quite a bit on softwares now, but in the beginning, you keep it limited. Just overall, very minimal startup costs. You're not gonna be putting a huge dent in your pocket to start an AI social media agency, social media marketing agency. Now, when it comes to e-commerce, this does vary widely, right? Depending on if you're doing drop shipping, which has very low upfront costs, right? Because you're essentially the middleman for products that are produced by manufacturers in other countries. But Amazon FBA, for example, does have very large upfront costs. You're gonna be spending 4, 5, 6, 10,000 for Amazon FBA because you're actually purchasing that inventory up front and then selling it on Amazon, right? So slightly different than drop shipping, and there is gonna be, of course, a much higher upfront cost for that. And so for drop shipping, it would be extremely low startup costs, and for Amazon FBA, it would be relatively high startup costs, because physical products like Amazon FBA, they will require significant inventory and logistic costs, while drop shipping or just digital products, for example, info products, very, very low startup costs, essentially nothing, right? Because you can either you're drop shipping those from manufacturers, or even e-commerce with info products, you're just selling digital assets, right? And so it's very little. Now, when it comes to growth operating, again, very low startup costs because you're essentially not paying for anything. You're gonna maybe use a couple analytic tools, basic software, you might have your own Go High level. You won't need to have employees or anything until you start to scale up, and costs are often offset by scalable systems and methodologies, because you're really just handling the back end revenue channels for businesses, right? You're plugging your systems into a business that's already making money, and you're helping them scale, and you're taking a percentage of what you bring them. And so it's usually anywhere from like 15, I've seen it even go up to like 40% for like paid community growth operating and stuff like that. And so you can make a good bit of money growth operating. I do think this is a viable business model, but when it comes to the other aspects here, you'll see why it doesn't compete with the AI agency. And so very low startup cost for growth operating, essentially zero to start. It's just gonna be a matter of finding a business that wants to work with you and take on the risk of having you handle their back-end channels. Now, the second section here, when it comes to scalability and growth potential, Faceless YouTube, it is scalable. It is scalable. It scales through content batching, outsourcing video editing, voiceovers, and leveraging evergreen content. Revenue potential grows as videos accumulate views over time. And look, you can start to hire a team, build out a team, all that type of stuff as you start to scale up. But again, it's Faceless YouTube, right? And so you'll see later on what the big pitfalls are with Faceless YouTube, but as you can see so far, very viable, very viable. Now, OFM. OFM is also very scalable. It's an agency model, right? It's an agency model. It's just a slightly, or I'll say moderately unethical agency model, but it is very scalable, or I won't say highly scalable. It is scalable, can scale by building a roster of models and leveraging social media and scheduling tools. However, individualized attention to talent may limit rapid, large-scale expansion. And so the really big OFM guys I've seen, they manage a couple models that are just absolutely printing. Again, I will not recommend this business model. I won't advocate for it. I think it's very unethical, but it is a very popular one that I see nowadays. Now, when it comes to the AI SMMA model, which is of course what we're here to see, this is what we run, is very highly scalable. Once the systems are in place, the ad campaigns and AI appointment setting systems can be easily duplicated and optimized across clients, allowing the agency to grow without bottlenecks in delivery. For every single client, and this is why niching down is so important, and that's what the next video is going to be about, or the next section. When it comes to doing fulfillment, our fulfillment is the exact same for every single client. It's very easy for us to replicate it, very easy for us to duplicate it, and that's what we do with every single client. The exact same systems, the exact same onboarding and fulfillment processes, and it makes it highly scalable. Now, drop shipping and e-commerce. It is highly scalable, especially if it's, drop shipping or digital assets, for example, or info products. Highly scalable. Digital models or drop shipping allow rapid expansion, while physical inventory models may face logistical hurdles. So of course, Amazon FBA is, you might have slightly higher margins than drop shipping, but you are going to have to deal with the physical inventory, dealing with the supplier, dealing with all this type of stuff that can cause just logistical difficulties with scaling. Whereas drop shipping and everything, you're still gonna have to deal with manufacturers and stuff, but they're you're just the middleman, right? The products are being sent directly to the clients or the purchaser, you're the customer. You're not actually dealing with those products physically yourself, which does make it much, much more scalable than dealing with the physical products. Now, growth operating. Growth operating is also highly scalable because you're essentially just working with the back-end systems for a business, right? When you know how to scale a business on the back end, which is you need to get to that point, right, where you do know what to do, it's very easy. You have the knowledge, it's very easy to do it over and over again, and you plug your systems into multiple different clients, right? You take 15%, 20%, 10% of a client's revenue that you're generating them, you do that for 5 big clients, you're making a really good amount of money. And so when standardized growth strategies are implemented, the potential for recurring revenue through long-term client engagements is very, very high, right? You continue making that recurring revenue every single month. Once you put those systems in place, you can kind of back off a little bit if it keeps printing for the client and you keep making them 50, 100, 200K a month and you're taking 10 to 20% of that. Now, when it comes to market demand and trends, this is where we're gonna be talking about the demand versus the supply of each of these business models, right? And so this is where you start to see some of these businesses that in the first 2 categories, most of them were very good, right? This is where you start to see it fall off a little bit. Now, when it comes to Faceless YouTube channel, there is a very high demand for content online, right? Everybody's using content. There's billions of users on all these social media platforms all the time, right? YouTube specifically has billions of users every month, but there's also very, very high supply. YouTube is also more popular on the creator side than it ever has been. And so this is where, basic market economics, right? High demand, low supply, amazing, you're gonna do very, very well. But high demand and high supply, you're competing against tons of different people, and also just nobody wants to show their face. They're scared to post content, so all the beginners who are like, I don't want to have my face online, I don't want to show myself, they want to start a faceless YouTube channel, and there's just so much competition, and you got to actually put in a good amount of effort and create very appealing content for it to take off. High demand for YouTube content across niches, but competition is very intense, like I mentioned. Success often depends on targeting undeserved niches, SEO optimization, and just overall consistency, posting very frequently. Now, when it comes to OFM, there is a high demand. There is a high demand of OFM, but there's also a moderate supply, right? And so when I say there's a moderate supply, there's a moderate supply of models who are making good money. That's the thing, because if you want to take a cut of a model's revenue, you need them to be making a lot. Like a majority, I forget what the exact statistic was, but like almost the large majority, the average OnlyFans model is making like $300 a month or something. Like it's very, very pathetic. And so that's where the supply is very low, right? There's a very low supply of models who are making a lot of money that you can, take a cut of or help scale up to the point where you are making them enough money to where a cut that you're taking is a good amount of revenue or a good amount of cash for you. But there is a high demand. There's always a high demand of OnlyFans stuff. There's a ton of lonely men, the lonely man epidemic out there. There's always people paying for the models, but you should make sure you're marketing properly. And so growing demand as more creators and influencers turn to OnlyFans, the model appeals to those seeking professional management to optimize earnings and brand presence. Again, I don't recommend this business model, but I do want to talk about it because I see so many people saying, I want to start an OnlyFans management agency. You're pretty much a digital pimp. And so, if that's the way you want to go, that's why I wanted to break it down, because even if that is the way you're considering, it shows you the AI agency model is the better way to go for both morals and scalability. Now, with the AI agency model, there is extreme demand and relatively low supply. Businesses are desperate for consistent leads and booked calls. Every business thrives off of that across all niches. They all need leads and they all need appointments, they all need sales. Few agencies combine AI automation with proven SMMA systems, creating high demand and low competition in this space, because we're running a traditional SMMA, but we make scaling and just overall running the agency fulfillment so much easier by using these AI systems to make scaling that much easier. And overall, the demand, every business needs leads, every business needs appointments. So who's gonna be the one to do it? Because there's a low supply. And the reason I say low supply, there's a lot of agencies, but there's not a lot of good agencies that get results. So when you get to the point where you are getting good results, which if you follow all the information I'm gonna show you across this series, you will be one of those agencies that does well. You'll see there's very little competition. It's very easy for us to close clients because there's very little competition in our space of agencies that deliver the caliber of results that we do for our clients. Now, when it comes to e-commerce, there is extreme demand. There's extreme demand for online products, right? So many people, like the amount of people who are purchasing online is ridiculous on both Amazon, TikTok Shop, all just Instagram ads. I've purchased tons of things from Instagram ads. And so when it comes to that, the demand is very, very high. But there's also a very high supply. Everybody wants to run TikTok Shop, Amazon FBA, drop shipping. Drop shipping is the classics, right? I swear every single person who runs an online business, regardless of the niche, tried drop shipping at one point or another, right? So there's a very, very high supply. But channels, these business models do continue to thrive with ongoing shift to online shopping, right? There's more and more people buying stuff online every day, and the consumer trends favor convenience and niche products. Now, when it comes to growth operating, there is moderate demand, but there's a very high supply. There's so many people who are trying to run growth operating because they don't want to start their own business for whatever reason. They think it's going to be a lot easier to, hey, I'm not going to start my own business. Instead, I'm just going to help somebody scale their business. If you have no knowledge, helping somebody scale their business is just not a viable option. You don't know how to run a business. You don't know how to scale a business. So how are you going to go help somebody else do that? And so there is moderate demand. For example, a lot of agencies, myself, I'm getting pitched by growth operators all the time. Majority of them are like 15-year-old kids who have never even run a business. And so there is a ton of supply, but the demand for it is just not there unless you're one of the top guys who is crushing it for people, which there are some in the space. But if you're not one of them, it's very difficult to get clients. Now, skill set and learning curve. This is a big one, right? Because when it comes to the type of skills you're gonna need, how long does it take for you to actually get good at the necessary skills for these business models? It's very, very important. It's just something you're gonna wanna really take in and be aware of for every business model that you're considering. Now, when it comes to faceless YouTube, there's a moderate learning curve. It's nothing ridiculous, but it is, of course, you're gonna need to get comfortable with content, long form content specifically, and having a good faceless YouTube channel, good content, good niche that you're going after, and knowing what those are. What even is a good niche? What is good content? That's the tough part, right? And that's where the learning curve comes into place. That's why I put moderate learning curve, because it is very easy to start, but being good at it is difficult. Now, for OFM, again, a moderate learning curve. You're gonna need to learn a lot of digital marketing, what actually does well in terms of content. A lot of it is gonna be organic marketing, right? The big OnlyFans models you see, it's because they have millions of followers on social media and, 2% of their audience pays. That's tons and tons of people, right, that are paying for, their stuff. And so you don't need to be crazy tech savvy. You do need to know how to make viral content, which is difficult. You do need to know what blows up, digital marketing. You need to know how to work with these models, all this type of stuff. So there is definitely a bit of a learning curve there, a moderate learning curve. Now, when it comes to the AI SMMA, there's a very small learning curve. There's no advanced tech or coding skills needed, and a lot of it is pre-built frameworks, pre-built templates that are proven, and you can get a lot of this information for free, which again, I'm gonna lay out throughout this entire video, or throughout this entire series here, which if you just implement this, you will know what to do, which is why I say it's a small learning curve, right? You can watch, 5 hours worth of content and know relatively what to do with your agency, and then you just need to put it into practice. That's why I say it's a small learning curve, because you really just need to worry about client acquisition, client relationships, rather than these very complex setups and AI agent builds and all that type of stuff. And I know that I am making it seem easier than it is. It is still work. You still do have to put in time and everything, but there's a very small learning curve when it comes to this type of stuff, which is why it's the business model I wanted to learn when I knew nothing. Now, when it comes to e-commerce, drop shipping, Amazon FBA, there's a moderate learning curve, because again, it's gonna come down to a lot of these systems running ads, dealing with suppliers, dealing with manufacturers. If you're doing Amazon FBA, physical inventory, storing this stuff, all the logistics that comes along with that. And so it does vary based on the business model specifically, like I mentioned, but the core skills include online marketing, product management, customer service, and again, sometimes inventory management if you are dealing with the physical products. Now, when it comes to growth operating, again, there's gonna be moderate to steep learning curve, because not only are you dealing with digital marketing, data analytics, product management, and growth hacking essentially, but your learning curve is gonna range because you're managing an entire business. You're handling the entire client acquisition and a lot of the marketing and a lot of the fulfillment as well potentially, but usually the sales and marketing side for these businesses. And so if you don't know how to do this for a business, it's gonna be difficult to learn how to do it for a business that isn't yours, right? And so that's why it is better to know how to run a business before you start helping people on the back end to scale there. And so that's why I say it's a moderate to steep learning curve, because essentially the prerequisite for growth operating is knowing how to scale a business. Now, when it comes to profit margins and revenue streams, so Faceless YouTube is of course very high profit margins. There's very low overhead, very low cost. You're gonna be making money off AdSense, affiliate marketing, right? If you're promoting products, which is gonna be a very, very effective way to go. Sponsorships and digital product sales, info products, very, very high margins. You're gonna be looking at like 90% plus margins, 95 even, 98 once you really start to scale. And so you're gonna have very high recurring income as long as your content's consistently getting views. The costs are mainly time, tools, and outsourcing to editing and stuff once you have that team in place. Now, when it comes to OFM, again, very high profit margins. The money you're making, you're gonna have very high profit margins on that. Offers potential for high margins through revenue sharing, management fees, performance incentives. Profitability does depend on the model success and efficiency of scaling the roster, but again, very high margins. Now, again, with the AI SMMA, also very high margins. With low overhead and delivery handled by ads, automation, most revenue flows directly into profit. We have about 65 to 70% margins in our agency right now, and agencies can charge retainers, performance fees, and percentage of ad spend models without major ongoing costs. We charge monthly retainers for our clients, and if we have a client paying us, for example, our average retainer is about $2K a month, our costs on that are gonna be about $200 to $400 a month. Again, we do have other costs on top of that, but per client individually, it's about that. And so if we have, let's say just hypothetically, we have 10 clients, for example, that's $20K per month. We'll probably be spending about probably $400 to $600 per client. And so sitting at relatively good profit. Then with software costs and everything like that, we'd probably be profiting around 12 to 14K off that 20K. And so that's just to give you a breakdown of the math there. But then of course at scale, the profit's gonna be about the same, but you're gonna be taking home a lot more cash, right? Because if it's 100K, 65, 70% margins is 65 to 70K profit. Now, when it comes to the e-commerce side, it's very low profit margins, very, very low unless you're doing info products. Drop shipping, very low. I know people that are profiting 10 to 30%. With Amazon FBA, I know people that are profiting anywhere from like 15, 20 to like 50%, which 50% is pretty solid margins with this type of business model, but margins do vary. Physical products often see lower margins due to overhead, while digital or dropshipping models can yield higher profits, but the revenue streams may be one-time or subscription-based, right? And so it does depend a little bit on what you're focusing on, but overall, this is like, these business models are notoriously known for having low margins. Now, when it comes to growth operating, it's very high profit margins. You don't have very much expenses. You're making most of the money because you're taking a cut of what you're generating in the business, right? They usually pay you that, and that's really all you need to do, right? You keep essentially you keep all of it, what you're paid. So very, very high profit margins. Typically combines retainer or project-based and performance fees. High margins are attainable with effective operational efficiency and robust client base, right? If you make a client 100K, you take 20%, you make 20K, you might have 1,000 or 2,000 in expenses, but overall you won't have much to worry about. Now, the final section here, and probably the one that is the one that most of you guys wanted to see here, is the potential and the speed to hit 10K a month. Everybody wants to know, hey, how quickly can I hit 10K a month? Can I hit it in 30 days? Can I hit it in 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What is it? A lot of you guys want to hear, oh, 30 days is when I'm gonna hit 10K a month. And look, we have had people that we've worked with scale their agencies, hit 10K a month. We hit 10K a month within 30 days in both agencies that we built. Within 30 days, we hit 10K a month. We hit 20K a month in the first one 30 days and the second one 60 days. And so you can hit those numbers very, very quickly, but I want to set the standard here for somebody starting from completely zero with no prior knowledge, the average person. So when it comes to Faceless YouTube, 6 to 12 months, you might be hitting 10K a month. 6 to 12 plus months. I know people that took 2 years, some people 2 months, but 6 to 12 months is about the average, right? Typically takes 6 to 12 months to grow a channel to monetization, which is 1,000 subscribers plus 4,000 watch hours. Building consistent revenue requires ongoing uploads and niche authority. When it comes to OnlyFans management, again, 6 to 12 months is pretty reasonable. I know a lot of people who it took them a very, very long time, even longer than this. And so effective management of a growing roster and optimized social media strategies can lead to 10K a month profit as models' earnings increase, but it's not something where you're just gonna wake up and boom, your models are printing, right? Unless you get lucky and you find a model who's making a ton of money already and you take a cut right off the bat. Now, when it comes to the AI SMMA, I think 3 to 6 months is a very, very good timeline to set for somebody starting from completely zero. And again, if you're working with somebody who helps you, like us, for example, it will be quicker. But 3 to 6 months is a very good timeline to where if you're actually going in 8 hours a day, you're treating it as a full-time job, you're putting in all the time, the effort and consistency to learn everything on your own, or if you watch this whole series and you implement everything, it will probably take you around 3 to 6 months to get to the consistent 10K monthly recurring revenue. Because by setting up campaigns quickly and leveraging AI outreach, agency owners can start booking appointments and generating clients within weeks, making 10K a month realistic milestone in under 6 months. 3 to 6 months should be your goal. Now, when it comes to drop shipping, e-commerce, Amazon FBA, 12 to 18 months is probably what you're gonna be seeing here in terms of profiting 10K a month into your pocket, because achieving 10K a month profit demands overcoming thin margins and scaling operations, right? Because if you're profiting 20% for drop shipping, which is kind of, a relatively normal spot to be, even with Amazon FBA, you're gonna need to be making 50K a month, right? And so that does take time. I've seen people do it in 6 months, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month. I know people who have done that, but 12 to 18 months is the more average range you're gonna see. Now, when it comes to growth operating, I know a lot of growth operators as well. Establishing credibility and building a sustainable data-driven client portfolio takes time before reaching 10K a month in profit. And so you wanna be prepared for 10 to 12 months or 9 to 12 months to be an average range that you're gonna see for how long it takes to actually start making 10K a month in your pocket in personal profit, because you need to get people to trust you, help them scale your business when you've most likely never scaled a business. And so I don't recommend going into growth operating because you need to learn how to scale a business, or you're kind of just scamming your clients. And so you need to get to the point where you are. Now, as you can see here, after going over everything, which business model do you think is the best? I think I laid it out very clearly. As you can see, the AI SMMA, this is exactly what we've done to we've made over $700,000. This is one of our processors. We have another one with a little over 100K as well. We've made over $700,000 selling AI to businesses, doing this AI SMMA model. And this is exactly why I think it is the best business model for anybody to start who's looking to start an online business. I'm gonna be laying out everything in this 14-part series, showing you exactly how to set up everything from 0 to 100, A to Z, exactly how we did ourselves. So if you implement all of this and you put in the work, you will do very, very well. So that's the end of this section here, and I'll see you in the next section.